So in Innovate 2016, we've been taking the big picture view of politics and technology and their impact on each other. But on today's show, I want to be a little bit more granular and think about healthcare and politics and regulation. My guest today is Robin Smith, who's the CEO of ORIG3N, who, Robin, would it be fair to call you, you're certainly a startup, you're a serial entrepreneur, but a crowdsourced blood company?
Yes, one of the things we do is we crowdsource blood to build one of the most diverse banks of human samples on the planet. And we're trying to do that to actually impact the future of medicine.
I know you're a serial entrepreneur. This is the fourth company you've done. Yep. You said before the show that you were doing this for the impact rather than the money, so I assume you've made some money in your previous companies. What is the goal, though, at ORIG3N? Is it to improve the human condition, make sure that people's lives are better?
Yeah, I think that is the goal. We think that regenerative medicine and what we're doing today is like the internet was back in 1993, and we think that in 9 years, the idea that you have damaged heart or broken spines is going to be as alien as an iPhone would have been to somebody sitting in 1993. The real impact's going to be about not how you make somebody live forever or those kind of things, because I think those may come, but I think it's how do you live the healthiest life you can live for as long as you can so that those last years of people's lives aren't in this really massive decline that happens.
Crowdsourced or sharing medical economy, what does that mean? How do we share our blood, Robin?
Yeah, so what we do is we're asking everybody to donate a few drops of their blood. It's only a teaspoon, actually. And what we do with that blood is we convert it to an induced pluripotent stem cell. And that stem cell has all of the same attributes as an embryonic stem cell, but it's not an embryonic stem cell. It's coming from an adult. And from there, we can actually turn those cells into heart tissue or brain tissue or liver tissue. And the most fascinating part about this is if we were to take some of your blood and grow your heart tissue in our lab, it would actually start beating spontaneously and it would have the same rhythm as you. So if you had a genetically inherited heart disorder and arrhythmia, we could actually measure that arrhythmia outside the body, and we can help develop better treatments or better therapies for that particular individual.
Steve Case just wrote a book about what he calls the third wave revolution. I think your company is a very good example. Energy, education, particularly healthcare. And what Case argued was in these industries, in contrast with media, you need more regulation. The government have to be involved. After all, the idea of crowdsourced blood without any regulation is a scary thought. Would it be fair to say that with companies like ORIG3N, the government and regulation needs to be more involved?
I think there's a really important part for the government and regulations to be involved in these sometimes newer sciences, newer technologies. There's definitely a place for that. The way we approach it is we want to make sure that we have a direct connection with the person that is the patient or the person donating the sample. In a lot of cases, when you think about big pharma or biotech today, they're not actually interacting directly with their customer. Their customer is actually interacting with a physician or an institute or indirectly to them. And it's a really unique aspect because when we're not metaphorically touching customers, we are actually physically, poking them with a little needle and getting some blood samples. But what they tell us is really important. So every weekend when we're gathering samples from around the US and around the world, they're telling us things like, my family has this history, or I have one child with this disease and one child that's healthy, or I've had these issues.
So Robin, sorry to interrupt. Do we need more or less regulation? Is it important for government to be involved in these sorts of next generation sharing medical companies?
I think we need different regulations. I think we need newer approaches to some of these regulations that think about cohorts and N of ones, because in the personalized medicine space, the idea of getting massive cohorts of individuals and the way that we've approached these clinical trials needs to be adjusted a little bit.
So old style 20th century top-down regulation doesn't work in these new industries?
I think it'll have to change.
Be more specific.
I think it's going to have to...
we have to get rid of government entirely, or we have to reinvent government?
I don't think there's a reinvent government. I think there's... A good example is what Japan's doing. So in Japan, they've actually built a bypass to their FDA regulatory process for regenerative medicine technologies. There are 600 clinical trials going on right now in Japan around regenerative medicine. they've built this because this is a national treasure to Japan. This is a technology they see is going to be the future. And they knew that the traditional FDA processes that were there were inadequate for actually getting these things moving in a efficient way. So they built a new process that was slightly different and modified. And I think that's a good model for what the U.S. should be thinking about. Maybe not does government need to get involved more or less? It should be different, and it should be tailored for the approach and the sciences that are going to need those approaches.
Very complex issue. Are
It's
any of
very
the
complex.
candidates in this election in America even touching on these issues?
I don't think so at all. I think these concepts are probably pretty alien to some of the current candidates.
But important.
They're
Should
very
they
important.
be picking them up?
They should be. I
In
think they
terms
should
of the future, not only of the medical industry in America, but in terms of our personal health?
I think for the future of humanity, the U.S. is a leader in science and technology, and I think it's incumbent on our political system to actually engage in this in a way that's thoughtful and addresses
So how do we
the
get
complexity.
started, Robin? One thing, because these are big issues, they're complicated, they're very new to most people. What would be a good way to start to think seriously and creatively about the regulatory implications of technologies like yours?
Yep, I think there's 3 things that are necessary to do this if we're going to be successful. And I think one is education. I think the populace and the people in the U.S. need to be educated on what this new technology is about and what it can do for them potentially in the future, and the impact that it might have on the economics and the science base in this in this country. I think the second thing is building core capabilities in the U.S. is critical. Right now, with regenerative medicine technologies, some of these newer technologies, even with CRISPRs, you hear this stuff about CRISPR, gene editing. There's not a lot of capabilities out there when you think about the kind of analogy of what in the tech industry. When there's capabilities, everybody's building picks and shovels and tools to do this stuff. And I think in the medical sciences, they're always held in very elite hands and very elite pockets. And I think those core capabilities are going to need to be built out over the next few years. And I think the third thing is making sure that there's a healthy ecosystem that drives innovation. And it can't just be held in a couple companies. So I think those three aspects, and everybody needs to support this, right? It's from the government to local municipalities to academics to hospitals, and all the way through to even young children need to be exposed to sciences in a way that's I think more future thinking.